Recording. All right. Sweet. So I've updated the Trello board, for the next, I want to say 3 weeks. Give everyone an idea because we're really reaching the end of the course and it's going to be final project time. I know, exciting, right? Gonna build the project all on your own. So today we're going to be doing, I'll just kind of briefly go through next couple of classes, next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a use context today, which is another hook. There's lots of hooks. I'm just giving you like the top 3 hooks to use, use state, use effect, and use context. We are going to get into use reducer, which is like an extension of state, the use state hook. But today we'll do that. On Thursday, I want to meet with everyone one-on-one to discuss final project ideas. So you'll be coming to class. We're going to use that time to work on your final project. I'll go over the final project prompt. I have a list of APIs if anyone's interested in just like pulling data. But I really want everyone to start thinking about it because the deliverable for week 8 is going to be, you know what? Let me just pull up a link to our spreadsheet here, the homework spreadsheet, because I've also added, I guess, the next couple of deliverables here. Next week, I want you to submit a React architecture. So for your app, what do you expect to have? How many components? Which ones are nested under which ones? Which ones are you passing down state? Are you passing down props? I'm sorry. Which ones are you lifting state? Then for week 8, you'll be submitting at least some sort of initial build, something. And then week 9, these are homeworks, obviously. So week 9, I'm assigning final project build. And then week 10, you'd actually be demoing your project. So that's the reason why I'm saying we'll go through project one-on-ones, because in week 8, I want the deliverable to be your React architecture. Okay, so and then week 8, we'll go through the use reducer hook. Then for that week also, I wanted to go over using Firebase storage in your React app. Today we're going to be going over Google Sheets as well. I'm going to kind of throw that in there. Google Sheets, I know some of you wanted to pull your own data. I'll show you how to really set up a Google Sheet really easily. But Firebase is also a big thing used in the React world. Everything's like software as a service. And Firebase storage is one of those kind of services that you can use as a database tool. And then for week 9, we'll be going over some of the React ecosystem third-party things like styled components in D3, Redux, Material UI, which is kind of like a Bootstrap-esque framework. Maybe add some styling for your app. And then, let me swap these around. We'll do another final project one-on-ones, meet with everyone, try to help out in week 10 that Tuesday, and then the last day of class, we will present our projects. Okay, so if you do have any questions about that, let me know, reach out. I'm sure you might leave something in the exit ticket feedback today. So that's just, general overall what we're looking to accomplish over the next couple of weeks. But this Thursday, just really keep in mind what you're looking to do. I'll put together like a sign-up sheet, and we can sign up and get blocks of time. You can meet with me, Abdul. I really want to get a feel of where everyone is and what they're looking to accomplish. So you don't start just burning time looking at APIs and this API is not going to give you what you want, and then you burnt a lot of time. So let's see if we can get something up and running. Cool. Anyone have any questions about any of that? I know it was a lot. I'm like, here's a ton of stuff. We just started. All right. Well, so today we will jump into, I'll do a use effect review. We'll just take a look at the homework, and then I'll just use effect to pull in a Google Sheets API. Really easy. take us just a few minutes to kind of do that together. I'm just going to quickly take a look at one of the film's refactors just to see if everyone was on the same page with setting it up. So, you know, I'll select this out. So let's just go to app, because that's really all I asked you to do was app. Just take app and take it from what it was, where we had, you know what, let me take a look and see where it was. React Router, React Films. So we can just do a quick side-by-side comparison, right? And all I'm really looking at is here, right? This component did mount. Component did mount. Old way of doing it, class-based component, state is here, and we want to change all that. We don't want to use class-based components. We want functional components, and that means use state and use effect to replace both of those things, right? Along with, you know, now that we're converting it to a functional, getting rid of this, the keyword this anywhere. So if that was our original one, this is our converted one, right? So we have a bunch of use states there for grabbing things like the films, saves, current, API keys, and then using useEffect to make that API call, right? And the API call is getting all of these particular movies, right? Because if I broke the API call, let me see if I got rid of this H, we wouldn't have any movies, right? No movies. And now we have movies, okay? Oh, what did I do? Oh, you know what? I got rid of that. Okay. And so all we did was take state, split it up into these individual little state kind of elements themselves. We imported useState, we imported useEffect from React, and then we used useEffect to make the API call. And we set it up just like we did last class. Async, always try to use async and await to kind of, as that kind of pause mechanism to, I don't know, I always considered it as like making JavaScript is asynchronous, so we'll keep running, right? And that's why we're using async. So to me, async turns it into some sort of like synchronous mode where it kind of waits for this thing to run, and then it runs the next thing. Like that's what it's doing, right? It's waiting for that to run. Once you complete, then I run that, okay? To me, that's more of a synchronous feel to it versus an asynchronous where it just keeps running. So when we just use fetch by itself, yeah, nothing is going to wait. We wouldn't output anything into data if we weren't using async and await, okay? You could have done this with also, I don't think this was done here, but was it film listing? Film listing, yeah. It wasn't done in film listing. I didn't do it. I just pulled one of the solutions that were submitted. But you could have also done it here too, right? You could have used state right here, refactored. I'm not going to go through the whole process of doing that. If you didn't do it, you know, you can take one of these and redo it also, okay? Any questions on homework? Yeah, I didn't think it was all that complicated. Sweet. So I am going to walk you through, I'll slide this out, back to our color switcher. I think there's going to be a day when I'm just going to hate this thing. I'm going to hate it. I'm not going to want to do it anymore. That day hasn't come yet. So what I wanted to do was just use state and useEffect here. Actually, just useEffect to import a Google Sheet. Show you how easy it is. If you really plan on importing data via Google Sheet, this is a great way to kind of like have a sheet where you can just update the sheet, refresh your page, and boom, you got all the new data. Okay, so this little URL over here, I'm going to copy this URL. I'll select this out as well, so you don't have to copy and paste it. And if I paste it in here, that's just a Google Sheet. That's all it is. There's nothing fantastic about this, just a Google Sheet where a name and active, I'm not really using active inside of our app. I just added it there so that maybe later on we could say, hey, this color is active, and maybe the colors themselves could be objects, and they're aware whether they're active or not, okay? Really, right now, it's just kind of an array of strings, not really efficient, right? Objects are a better way of capturing key value pairs associated with an individual thing. So, if you wanted to use this particular sheet or any sheet, you'd first need to share it. So I would go and share it just like that. And, you know, I'm just setting it to view because, in all honesty, in React, I'm not going to be able to use this particular way to update the sheet or send data. This is just a pull data. If you really wanted to use Google Sheets API, it's a lot more complex than what we're doing. So this is just a way to pull the data. So I just set it to view. And then I have this URL here, right? I mean, I've already done it. I have this URL, and you can see it's like docs, google.com spreadsheets, and then some long GUID here. Okay, I would copy this. That would be my goal. I'd copy this URL, okay? And that's what I have here. That's the URL that I just shared with you. That's where I pulled it from. The minute I shared it, I pulled it from there. Now there's this ID here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Can't really see it. This GUID here, right? This global unique identifier here between the D and the edits. This GUID is unique for this particular sheet. Okay. And what I've done is I've taken that GUID and I've just put it into another variable, an ID variable, and that's the ID for that sheet. So I just kind of took that, put it in there. They're identical at this point in time. Okay. Now, in order to use that particular sheet, I need to do one more thing. Before I get to this second thing right here, I'm going to show you what you would also need to do. I need to go to File and publish this document to the web. So if I published it, I can publish it here. I've already published it. I could stop publishing. I'm doing the whole document. There's ways to do this. If you have tabs, you can do specific tabs. You can do the whole document and then pull specific tabs later on. There's a real basic way of doing it. I'm not getting into multiple tabs or anything. And so what you can see here is it's been published. I mean, I can stop publishing, republish, easy enough. And you would have, see it's published. And so I published this spreadsheet. Okay, I don't need this URL, don't need anything from here really. And you see how it added this 2 packs thing right here, but I don't really need that. What I need is this particular URL here. And where that URL came from, I don't know. I pulled it from just a tutorial on doing Google Sheets, you know, pulling JSON. There's a bunch of tutorials out there. Some of them are just really short because it's so easy to do. And all they suggest is you take this Google Sheets URL and put that ID that I captured from this Google Sheet. It's all I got to do. I take that ID, put it in there, and now I have access to all of that data. So say I was to take this, I'm just going to do this real quick. I'm going to take this URL, just so that you can see, that is the URL. I'm going to get rid of this ID. So I'm using string interpolators here with backticks and backticks, right? Opening and closing backticks, and then $ curly brace ID to enumerate that ID. Now, for the second one, I wanted you to see what it's like to get this data. So now that I have this, I should be able to open this up, go here. Let me open up another tab. And this should pull it back as JSON. It's easy enough, right? I mean, it couldn't get any easier than that. Here is the data as JSON. Now, this is where things get, I don't know, a little confusing because I think, or I should just see a list of colors, right? That's all I have. But you see this whole thing. It's got this feed, it's got IDs, it's got all these key value pairs, and then you need to know where to go to get the actual data. And the data is here. It's in this entry key, and an entry key, entry is an array of things, and I have 5 things. And my colors, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, right? So inside of here, I have entry array, and I have my colors, and then you're going to see like, well, where's the name of the color, right? I got to browse down, and like, this is how it stores it, as this GSX $. That's the key, and then it's calling it name because it's pulling name from here. The column name becomes this, this key name here that is preceded by GSX. That's just Google. I don't know why Google did it. That's just what they're doing. And then the value is $T. So with that in mind, now we would know how to pull the data using the Google Sheets API. Okay? So I'm going to go back to our app, and now I know how to pull it, and I can pull it, right? I have the URL here. So we could do this. I could take this URL, right? Let me just take that URL, and I'll put it inside of the app, just so I have access to the URL. Now that I have access to the URL, I imported useEffect already. So I have useState and useEffect. I intended on doing that anyway. So now that we have useEffect, let's add what would be a component did mount. Okay, I have all of these colors already here, but those colors are being passed from this colors array. So if I was like, I don't want to pull it from the props colors array, I'm going to make the API call here. So now I have no more colors, right? All my colors are gone. So let's use the useEffect to grab those colors and see what we need to do. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to say useEffect, right? That takes a callback. Now, the fact that I want this only to run one time, one single instance, I'm going to give it a stop mechanism, right? And this empty array will tell it to run only once. And the reason is because there's nothing in here to do any sort of comparison to make the distinction whether it should run again, right? So when we do useEffect takes the place of 2 of the life cycle methods, actually 3 of the life cycle method, right? Component did mount, component did update, and component did update, and component did unmount. Okay, we haven't really used the unmount. And did update would be if any one of those state values updated, then this thing would trigger the useEffect. And I know, Gustavo, you had done some research and you found out that you could have multiple useEffects. Yeah, and I also took a look, and you can have multiple useEffects methods there to run different logic. Parse JSON from Google Sheets. Yeah, okay, awesome. So Abner, you found some sort of script that'll do it. Cool. So I'm going to go back here. Let's get this done here. So now I have useEffect. So I'm going to go and say let's make API call. Okay, and that's going to be an async method. Async. Boop boop boop. Right. We want it to be async, so we could run the fetch call here and then call that method later on. Okay. So I'm going to say let data is equal to await fetch, and then JSON data URL, right? So I'm going to fetch this data here. Okay, now I'm doing the await. It's going to wait. Okay, cool. Let color items, and I'm going to call this color items entry. And again, you can call it whatever you want, but I already know kind of the first entry point to that data is via a key called feed and then entry. Entry is where the data is. So you'll just have to take my word on that. And so I'm going to say here is equal to await, right? Data.json, because we need to parse it. Okay. Now this is where we are going to create a new array with all of those colors. So I'm going to say const color items array is equal to color items entry. Okay, that's just what I'm calling it. Dot feed. Okay, now I'm going to dot feed. Let me just go back up here real quickly. I'm going to dot feed because this is the access point to entry, right? Feed has a key called entry, and entry has an array of our things, right? Everything that we want is inside of entry. So that's my first access point is dot feed, dot entry. Now I have the array, and I am going to map over the array, okay? And now that I'm mapping over the array, I need to return back that key, the color, and that color is stored in d.gsx $name. That returns back an object, and that object has a key called $T. Okay? Once again, don't know why they did all this. That's just what they did. I'm going to go back to the data, so once again, we can just confirm that. I'm in entry right now. If I expand one of the objects, there is a GSX name that has a key of, that's an object that has a key called $T. And then it'll return gray or whatever color is in there. Okay? So now that we have that, we can just update the set active color method here, right? Here's the, here, actually, set active colors array. Okay, cool. I have that data. So now I can go ahead and say set colors array, and we will just give it the color items array. Boom. Okay. And then we have one thing left to do. All right, does anybody remember what we got to do? I mean, I said it.
Make API call.
Yeah, I got to call it, right? So now make API, this is uppercase call, whoop, and now we get all the colors. Okay, now all I have to do is go to this sheet. Now watch this. If I was to make it editable, right? So I'm going to make it so that you can edit the sheet. If you go in and you add a color now, any color you want, go here, I don't know, red, right? I could say false. We don't need this value here. I should go here, and if I refresh the page, obviously, I should see red. There, see, orange. So people are already adding stuff. It's a great way to kind of build something out that allows you to coordinate a small little project where you, your friends, coworkers could build, you could build something out, they could add stuff, and then all you have to do is refresh and then see the data, right? So we got rocky road, tomato, awesome, love the colors. Let me refresh one more time. There we go, see? I guess this color here, this white color, is not, or Rocky Road isn't a color, or maybe it's Rocky Road one word, because it's coming back as white, which means it doesn't really know what to do with Rocky Road. Just saying. Cool. Just really wanted to show that. Show you how easy it is. I know for your final project, some of you are thinking about pulling your own data, so this would be a great opportunity for you to pull your own data, okay? Any questions? I don't know, pretty straightforward, right? You can watch the recording to see how it's done. Tons of tutorials on just doing what we just did. Share the document, publish the document, take your key from the shared URL and paste it inside of this URL, this Google Sheets one, and boop, you got JSON, okay? So really easy enough. Any data you want to pull. Cool? I do have a list of APIs that I can show you later on that you could use if you wanted to build something interactive. You have the whole list previous projects. If you wanted to examine those previous projects, you could do that as well. I still have, you know, the ability to add a random color. Oh, is this broken? Oh, I must have broken it. Yeah, something broke. Thought I had to add a random color. Oh, there we go. It was just slow. Boop, boop. See? You can still add random colors, pull colors, whatever, right? See? Cool. All right. So we're good with that. Let us jump into useContext API. Okay. So I do have some lecture notes for this. Just going to look at it briefly to show you kind of what we're trying to accomplish with this. And when you would use kind of context. Now, the best way to like really show what we're doing is this, and why you would use context to do this. We've done this several times already, where in order to get data down to nested child components, you needed to pass it down several times, right? I think the most complex app that you had built was films, right? If we took a look at films, you would see that it was, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, let me see, do we have it here? I have the architecture right here. See, this is where the architecture comes in handy. We have this, right? And so we could see that this handle fave toggle gets past here, it gets past here, it gets past here. Does it get, no, this is just on fave toggle, right? Handle click on fave toggle. Yeah, on fave toggle here gets executed on fave, right? So it's getting passed. It's getting created here, passed here, sent to here. Okay. Well, what if we, instead of doing this, which is kind of what we're doing right now, what if we could do that? What if we could get it directly from the parent all the way down to the specific child that we want to get it access to? Okay. Now, when we start doing this, we start falling into, let me just see if it's right here, consumers and providers. Let me go right here. Providers and consumers. Now, you may not have realized it. We didn't take a look at the React when we were doing this, the React plugin for developer tools, but we're going to do that right now. So you see that you have been kind of working with these providers and consumers for just a little bit. And what I mean by that is if I go to iStocks, okay, so I'm going to open iStocks. And here's iStocks. And we know we have iStocks, we have React Router, right? Okay, now I'm going to go to Developer Tools. And in Developer Tools, I have our React kind of plugin for developer tools. Now I'm going to go to components. And we don't really go here too often, but I'm here now, and I'm taking a look. And what I see here is provider, consumer, okay? The switch, consumer, router, provider. So you're seeing this kind of consumer and provider concept here, okay? And what that means is this provider is allowing content to be passed down, and it's allowing these child components to consume that content. That's really what it is. And in the end, all we did was this, right? We wrapped something around in a opening and closing component, right? And so if I go here and I go to kind of mean, really, which has the other switch, and then it has routes, header also has these links here, right? And those links represent these, right? Consumer, okay? And it's consuming things that are being passed to it. Right? Now, how is it consuming it? Well, you know, router provider must be providing that. If we have a provider, we have a consumer also, okay? Now, one thing with router that we didn't cover, and I just want to show you the difference. So I see this image, and I am just going to take a snapshot of it because I'm going to introduce just another router provider and router consumer model, okay? Something we didn't cover. So if I go to app, and I'm in app, and I'm going to console log props here in app, as well as in main, I'm console logging, actually home. I'm going to do it in both home and in app. Now the reason is this, okay? App itself isn't interacting necessarily with the routes. The routes themselves are being called via main. That's where they're being called. It is wrapped in router, but it itself is not being called by route. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to the console. Now, this is app, and if I examine app, it really got nothing. App really doesn't have any props being passed down to it. Okay, I'm going to go to home. Do you see that home has props being passed down to it? You see that? It's got history, location, match. And where is that coming from? What's passing that down? I'm going to go back to home, right? All home has is props right here, and main is what calls home. So where are those props coming from? Any idea?
They come from route.
Right, they come from route. Route is what giving over those props, right? Okay, but you don't see it being passed here. Like there's nothing in here in route that's like, here you go, versus when we do render, we need to pass down that prop. So that's the difference. Component versus render, two different ways of doing it. Okay, now app doesn't have it, right? So what I want to do is set app to be able to do that. Okay, so you can just see this router, this provider and consumer model like actively happening here. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to have to import a new component called, and I'm going to say with router. And this is going to take me to the React training documentation, and it's with router, and with router gets imported from React router, not React router DOM, okay? And then down here, we wrap React router around the component. So we're kind of like passing it through. This is a concept of higher order components. So I'm just going to go back here, right here. And I need to install the dependency because all I did was install React router DOM. I didn't install React router here. So I'm just going to go here and say React router, right? I get React router. Now React router's there. Okay, so I can say import with router from React router. Okay, so I'm just importing that. And here's the app. And I want React with router to consume that app and then provide it access to things. So I'm going to say with router, and I'm just going to surround it. Everything seems to work, right? Look, boop, boop, nothing changed. There's no like magic that just happened. But I'm going to go back to our app. I'm going to clear out these messages. I'm going to go back to components. And what I want you to see now is that app has access with router and has router consumer here. Now, I'm going to bring up the image that I originally took a snapshot of. So here it is. We can just compare the two, right? So here was app, right? App didn't have anything with router consumer. Here's the router provider. And now app has access to this router consumer, right? It's like app with router, then there's router consumer, and then there's app now. And so there's this consumer model happening again. And now because we are passing it down, or we wrapped it in with router, if I go to the console, let me see, I'm going to refresh. We should see, look, this is app, and now app has access to all of that routing information. Okay, something that happens a lot when people are using React Router and building out their apps, they want access to that route information, but the component like app isn't being rendered via a specific route. It's the parent that allows the sub-routes to render, or allows those routes to render, so it doesn't have access to this. And sometimes you want to get access to that, and that's just one way to do it. So I really just wanted to point out that whole consumer model, and by doing that, we've just given it access to consume this provider of router, okay? All right. Now, we need to emulate this, okay? I really want to kind of walk us through this particular instance right now. So I'm going to go back. I'm not going to use iStocks anymore. I have another demo. Okay, so this is what I want to walk us through. I have React Context API, which is the older API. That's like us learning about state, right? Hey, constructor in this dot state, or using state and then doing, you know, the set state, like this dot set state, right? That's Context API. This is the older one. I'm going to show you how we used the Context API to pass the data down, and then we're going to do a little refactor to use the useContext API. Okay? So here we go. So I'm going to take a look at these components. So I have a lot of components here, and I kind of nested it in this fashion because I wanted you to see that with this, you know, tabbing over, which is just margin, it looks as though they look like they're nested. So A is rendering B, B is rendering C. Okay, here D is rendering E, and E is rendering F. So I'm going to go to A, just, you know, I'm in app, and app is rendering component A and component D, and then in component A, it's rendering component B. B is rendering component C, right? And then C, we'd love to get some data passed down to C, okay? So what is the data that we want to get passed down? Well, I want to see a user, the username is, and this favorite color. So these are the two things. So I'll just start with the username first, and then we can take it from there, okay? So if I go back to app, okay, and this is kind of the old way of doing it. It's a long way, and a lot of people don't use the Context API as much. They've opted to go with something like Redux, which we'll be going over, you know, we think week 9, as a way to do state management, to pass state to different parts of the app that need it, versus this method that allows us to bypass some child components to get something down all the way to a specific child, okay? So in app, I need to create create a context. So I'm going to say const, I don't know, data, I'll put data context. Okay, so I'm going to be passing down some data, and this is going to be equal to React dot create context. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm calling the create context method, and that create context method is now going to give us access to two things. Now, if I was to console log, let me see, if I console, oh, I hate when that happens. Not log, you know, this is data context. And let's see what data context has. It's kind of like using use state. Use state would return back an array of two things, right? The value that you passed in and the method, okay? So this also provides us access to something. So let me open this up, just Let me, boop, do this. Let's see what we have. So this is the data, and it's an object, and it has a consumer, and it has a provider. So it's giving us access to two separate things, okay, this consumer and this provider. So I'm going to go back here. Now that we know that that's it, how do we use this consumer and this provider here? All right. So what I'm going to do now is apply this to the particular components, okay? So the component that I want to pass the data down to, I'm going to use it for this context API. So I'm not going to be touching this component D as of yet, or this. This is the component that I kind of want to pass the data down to, okay? So actually, this is it. So I'm going to do this, separate, so we can say, all right. So now I am going to call the data context. I am going to call the provider. Okay, so the provider gets set on the top level component that is going to be passing down data. And I'm going to pass the data. I'll just say value, and I'll just do here. Name is equal to, I don't know, Joe, right? Okay. And then I'm going to close this. And you see how it adds or creates this data context provider. So I'm going to take that child component and add it right in there, okay? So I've nested it inside the data context. And now we haven't really written a lot of, or any, have we? No, we actually, router did that, right? So if I go back to a routing example, where is it? Oh, I think I closed it. All right, never mind. React Router did that, right? We had router, and then we had app, and then we closed router, okay? So now that I'm passing or surrounding this, I'm providing access to component A to get access to specific information. That information is this name property. That's what I'm passing down. I'm passing down a value called name that we could use in child components, right? So A doesn't get touched. Like A itself is just a component, and it has access to that particular information. But I don't really want it to go through to B. B is not what I want. I go to B. I don't really want to touch B, and I have here C, right? B is rendering C, and it's inside of the C component that I actually want this to be used. Okay, this is where things get, you'll see why it's not used as often. And so we need to, now that we're here, I need to import that context that we created here, okay? Now, in order to import this context from the app, I need to export that contents first, okay? So in order to import it, I have to export it first, okay? Just like this. App gets exported, that means we can import app later. So wherever the context got created, you need to export it so that the child component can then import that. So I'm going to say import, I call it right, import data, what do I call it? Oof. Data context, right? I'm just going to call it data context, right?
You put double P in the import.
Okay. That looks good, right? Okay. So I'm importing data context from app, okay? So I'm going all the way up to app, and I'm importing this context, and I'm calling it data context, because what that means is when it exports it as an object, right? And it's going to find that object, and it's going to pull data context from that object. Okay. And then this is where things get just a little kind of ugly to work with. Okay. So I have this style, and I have my component, and I want to give access to that particular data. All right. So now I have to call the consumer, right? If I just go back to app, this was the provider of the information, and component C is the consumer of this information. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Data context dot consumer. Okay. And then once again, it creates this opening and closing context. Now, we're going to cut errors here until we finish working out the logic. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to surround it around the thing that I want to kind of work with. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Let's do this particular piece of information. So I'm going to just nest this over. Okay, awesome. So I'm nesting this over. Okay. Now inside of this consumer, you know, we're getting this render is not a function, and so it wants to do something. Okay. So this takes in an object, or I'm sorry, it's a code block, and this code block, so I'm just going to surround our info in this code block. Okay. And then the code block is going to take a key, an anonymous function, and we can call the argument that we pass in anything that we really want. Okay, I'll just call it user info. Doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you want. And then I'm going to pass another object because it's an anonymous function, right? I'm going to do this. This is, like I said, this is where things just get kind of ugly. Now inside of this anonymous function, I need to return this information. Okay, boom. And let's see what's happening here. So this is component C, and what it's telling me is it's trying to return, and in JSX, are we allowed to return multiple elements, or do we have to wrap it in a parent element? Now you might think like, oh wait, this return already has this kind of parent element, right? But we have to do the same thing here. Now, I mean, I suppose I could do this. Let me see, I could probably do this if I wanted to. This is one way to do it. Let me see if this is gonna work. Or is it gonna keep screaming at me? Nope, I could do it like that. Could wrap it in this. Does anyone know of another way that I could create some sort of faux pas element that doesn't exist? This did actually exist. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before after student element with the CSS stuff.
Yeah, so what we could do here, we could do this. We could say react.fragment. We could do this, and then I could close this. I'm just going to show you two ways to do it. React.fragment. Could do this. That works. Or I could do this, and this is a little technique that just makes it easier. I could just do that, and that works also. So these opening and closing also work just as easy, okay? Now that I have it, how do I get access to that piece of information? Well, that information was in user info, right? So if I say username is, and I could say user info, and user info, because it has to be in user info, right? And why is it not working? What am I doing wrong here? User info dot, I think it's user info dot name, right? Nope. Let me see, what am I doing wrong here? So we got user info, user dot name. No, that should have worked. Let me take a look here. So we're passing a name. You know what? I'm going to go here. I'm going to change this to name, but I don't think that that should even make a difference. Nope, it's not passing it down. Does anyone see? Let me just take a look here. User info. Because I know it's being passed down. I'm not getting any errors. So I know name is accessible. So what am I not doing right here?
Is name set to something?
No, it should. I'm going to try this. I'm going to just I'm going to see if I can console log. This is name. Let's just see if I did console log, what would that be here? Maybe I'm just missing. No, it's saying that name is undefined as though it's not passing name down, as though this provider is not passing this name all the way down here. I don't see why it would not pass it down. User context, data context. Yeah, unless I spelled. Yeah, this should work. I'm just going to show this real quick here. Let me show you. The name probably needs to be value. Oh, so you know what? I think maybe that is true. So I did call it value there. So let me go back here. I called it name. Ah, that's it. It has to be called value. All right. So here, when it has to be called value. There's just no other way around this. These context providers take in one key here called value, and you can pass it whatever you want, a string, an object, doesn't really matter. Has to pass it. And so when it comes down here and it's passed to the anonymous function, we can call this whatever we want. I just got it confused. We can call this whatever we want. I could go back and have called this, you know, user info. And I'm calling it user info because it's not just going to be a name, but I also need to pass down the favorite color also, right? So I'm just doing this so that we could say that that's how it's being passed down, okay? Does this seem like probably the most complicated thing we've done so far? Is React?
Nesting looks ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't like it. I'm always kind of reluctant to want to teach it, but it is a way of passing down data if you're not incorporating some sort of state management tool. If you're incorporating state management, like Redux or MobX, one of those tools that are independent of React, they are just state management tools, which React can use those as third-party tools. This is how you would get it done, okay? And passing it down like this, really, I don't know, kind of a convoluted way of doing it. I mean, this is like an easy example because if we were passing down multiple contexts, we'd have to nest these things and stuff gets really ugly really fast, okay? Now, if I wanted to pass down, say, more than just this value, right? I'm passing down this particular value. But what if I wanted to pass down like an object that had multiple things, right? I need to get more information to this particular provider. So I don't know, what if I was to do something like, what if I did this, like const user info is equal to, and if I created an object, and I was like, name, Joe, you know, fave color, blue, light blue, right? I should be able to pass this down, user info. Let's just make sure objects are not valid. Oh, anyone know why this is happening? This is a good error to come across. Objects are not valid as React child. Collection of children, use an array instead. Okay. What I believe is happening is this. I'm going to go to component C, and it looks like, hey, here's user info. And if I do user info.name, oh, no, I guess we can't pass it down. I thought it was doing it because user info now is an object. And
It does look like what the problem is, actually.
that's the error that I'm used to. Oh, here we go. Oh, because I didn't do it here. There we go. Okay. I was only doing it here, and I thought this was where I needed to do it. So you can use this provider and consumer model to pass down a whole object that has multiple key value pairs to the child if you need it. Okay. I just really still wanted to point out that error, that this particular error you might get quite a bit when working with React, where you cannot output onto the screen an object. So if you're trying to render an object in the JSX, you're going to get this particular error, that objects are not valid as a React child. You need to pull or elicit the key from that object in order for that to be a valid object. So now that I have user info here, I could then just do user info dot fave color, and I should get the because I got rid of the curly brace. Boop, get it back. Boom, light blue. Sweet. Okay.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
can you use this to modify the context? And so you could pass in a context. Could you use this to define, like, say, a global state, and then call it without having to pass it down, but use the consumer context to use that multiple times?
Oh, yeah.
Change these values?
So the idea is, say a good kind of use case for this is, say you have your profile image, right? So this application, when you're logged on, there's several components that show your profile picture, right? And your profile picture is being rendered in many different nested components, levels deep. So instead of passing them through all of these child components to get them to where they need to get to, those child components that need access to this higher level, your profile image, can just use the context API to get that information. Does that make sense? Okay. And we can pass methods around too. I could have passed a method down here bypassing component B, right, and A, really. And I could have passed that down, and we could have executed a method in component C that gets triggered all the way up in app if we had it. Okay, so you can actually use this for methods, for objects, for data, whatever it is that you need to pass down. Okay. So now this is the fun thing with React. You're not going to see this done a lot, because then people, once they start walking down this road and the application starts to become more robust, lots of data, lots of management of this data, this could be unwieldy at times, right? And it makes looking at the code even just ugly and not pretty, right? This is the old way of doing it too. There is the useContext hook. So what we'll do right now, though, it's 8:58. Why don't we take a break? When we come back, I'll walk you through the useContext hook, and then we'll jump into a lab. Cool? 8:58. So let's come back at 9:08. We'll take our 10-minute break. Break time. At 9:08. Okay. Everyone back. So now I want to use the, oh, is everyone back? Everyone's off camera. So looks like no one's there but Connor. Hey, Connor, you're there. You're there. I know you're alive. Okay. It's 9:08. You just give it another minute. Let's see.
I'm here.
Yep.
Here.
Cool. All right. Is anyone else there? Let's see.
No.
Okay. All right. Everyone's so pleasant today. Okay. I'll jump back in. All right. So we saw how to pass down the context using the, excuse me, hold on one second here. Oop. The provider and the consumer using the old context API. So let's take a look at doing it using the useContext hook. Okay, I'm gonna go back to app. Now, I could surround, let me see. I'm just lacking, let's see. Okay. I could surround or redo this around component D. For simplicity, I'm just going to take that consumer provider model and give it access now to component D. So component D now has access to the provider of user info. Okay. We're going to pass that all the way down. So I'm going to go to, we don't really care about D or E. We're going all the way down to F, right? That's the intent, to go down to F. So this is where things get a little easier. Okay. Now, we still have to set up the provider the same way we did before. That doesn't change. The consumer portion of it does change just a little bit. So the first thing that I'm going to need to do is import from React, just like we've done with all the hooks, useContext. I have to import this new hook. Okay. Now I still also need to import the that export right here, right? This data context. I still need to import that also. Import data context, from app, right? I still need to do that. Okay. This is where things start to get a little easier. Inside of our component here, I'm going to create a const. I'll call this data context in lowercase. And now I'm going to use context, the new context, and I'm going to feed it data context. Okay? So all I'm doing is incorporating the useContext hook and passing it in the data context. Doing it this way relieves or allows us to bypass the need to incorporate the whole consumer opening and closing tag elements. Okay. Now that I've done this, I have access to data context dot name. Look, dot name, and I have access to data context dot fave color. Look, now I got access to fave color also. Okay, so we can pass this down and it becomes just a little bit easier. I mean, it's not like leaps and bounds easier because in app we still need to go through the necessity of using the React create context, passing down or encapsulating the components that are going to be provided access as a provider. We need to have the value, pass down what we want, and then in the old way of doing it, this kind of convoluted way, I could see why people didn't want to do this. This is pretty convoluted, right? Doing the components, doing the callback, rendering again, that's got to be frustrating and prone to error versus the newer way of doing it like this, okay? Really succinct way of doing it, okay? Cool? All right. So if we wanted to do this with, say, the color switcher. Now, I'm going to do this because I want to get you working on the lab. So I'm going to show you, without me going through the whole coding solution again, is this. Okay. So in this color switcher, this particular instance of this color switcher here, I have access to a create context as well. So this handle change color context, right? And what I want to do is, because of the color switcher and the to-do list, really the things that we're passing down that those elements need access to are methods. Those are the methods that we're really, that those child components need access to. So I need to pass down a method. So I'm creating this create context, and I'm calling it handle change color context, okay? I'm going to go to where I would render the color list, and I'm going to surround that component and pass it the handle change color. And we know that handle change color just changes the background color, right? I take a look here, handle change color sets the active color, and then active color then changes the background color, okay? So I pass it down, and then in the color list item, all I do is import, right? Here we import it. We use context to import that as well. And then on click now, I call handle change color from the context. Okay? So I'll just backtrack. In app, I create the context, right? So let's just say I do this. I'm going to take that with our existing color switcher so we know. So I'm going to go here, and in our app, right, I put it up at the very top. In our color switcher app, here we go. I'm going to create this context, handle color change color context, right? Awesome. So I have this. I'm going to go down to our component and then surround it in the handle change color context dot provider, right? I'm going to pass down a value that is equal to the handle change color. I'm going to pass this down. Watch this. Pass this down right there. Okay. And then I need to close it. And here is our provider. I'm going to take this, and since we are passing around this, I'm going to do that. Okay. I'm going to tab that open. Okay. So now I just passed it down, right? I'm passing down this method. Now, if I go to color list, right? So handle change color here was already being passed down, right? We passed down handle change color to color list. Color list took handle change color, and it's, once clicked, passed in the color, and that's what caused it, right? So what if I did this? What if I got rid of handle change color here? It's no longer available. So if I click, nothing happens, right? I go to color list, and I get rid of it here, right? So I got rid of it in the two places, and I go straight down to color list item here. Well, here I would use context, right? I'm going to import use context, but I also need to import this, right? Handle change context. We need to do that. If I go back here and I take a look at color list item, handle change color context, right? That needs to also be imported. So I'm just going to kind of take this for brevity's sake here. I'll go to color list item, and I'll import that from app, right? Okay. Now that we have it, I can then say const handle change color, right, is equal to use context handle change color context, right? Okay. So you see how this on-click before was calling props.handle change color, because that's what was being passed down. Now we can do this. I can have a callback, and I can say handle change color, right? And I can pass it props.color, right? Since that's the color. And if we execute this, it works now. So what I just did is I bypassed, when I, in app, I didn't pass down that method to color list, which would have then called it here, right? But it still needed to get passed down to color list item, right? So the same sequence happened, except now in app, because we created the provider, I can pass the method directly through color list, directly to color list item, and color list item can execute it directly or have access to this method. Okay? Does that make sense? Right? Not too complicated. Okay. So your turn now. I know, right? So with the to-do list, you also had the same thing. Like I could delete something, right? So let me just take a look. If I go to the app and I look at what's being passed down. So I have this active color list item here, handle active list item, and that just deals with the click. And I have the handle remove list item, which would remove it, right? Either one of these methods you could pass down. Both of them are being passed down to the to-do list, right? And the to-do list is then passing them down here, right? At least the on-click. Yeah, so actually it's the on-click, this handle remove item that's being there, and the handle active list item. Okay? So what I want you to do is, I'm going to say maybe the handle remove list item. How about you try passing that down as context? Okay? Pass that down, remove it from the to-do list, so remove it from here, so it won't be accessible there, and make it accessible directly inside of the to-do list item. Okay? You have the color switcher right here as the working model. Okay? So you know how to pass it, pretty much doing something almost identical, except you're in charge of what you want to call those naming conventions. I'm not telling you what to call them. Okay? As a bonus, if you do get that done, as a bonus, I put in here a link to a shared Google Doc where you could set that up and do the Google Sheets if you want to, if you have the time. Okay, this is about the context API though. Okay? So I'm going to select this out. Okay, so here you go. There, I select it out. And I'm going to say I'm going to give it about 25 minutes. That'll take us to about 2:49, 47, maybe 30 minutes, 9:52. I think it's going to probably take you about that much time. Cool. I'll create the breakout rooms, and once again I'll pair it up based on the company, and then everyone else. The last time I did the poll, it seems everybody wanted to work by themselves, so I'm going to just kind of run with that. Okay. Does everyone know what we need to get done? Any questions? Okay. Right. I'm here. You need me? Reach out. Abdul's here. You can reach out as well. Okay. So let me create the breakout rooms. Breakout rooms. Make Abdul a host. Co-host. Create the breakout rooms. Open up all the rooms. Joey, I'm going to move you with 3. Okay. All right. Can you get the prompt to jump into the room? I paired you up, you and DeMuller in a room, and Joey, I paired you up with. You didn't get it? All right. Okay. I'll move you out, and then I'll move you back in. Let me see if that works. Move to here. Did you get that prompt, Joey? No? You didn't get the prompt? Okay, that's interesting.
I got it. I clicked into one before, but it booted me out not long after.
Okay. So you're not getting prompted at all right now because I just moved you. I'll try moving you back with Steven right now. Let me see. Move to 3. Yeah. I mean, if not, I can. Yeah, because if you can't join, you can't join a group without me closing them all. I'm not sure what I can do.
That's all right. I'll just jump the fence and go and.
You just go hang out. Okay. You can just throw stuff at them, from what I heard.
All that.
All that. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You got it. Abdul, I'll put you in a room. I'll jump into a room with you. Let's have breakout room 1, right?
Joe, if you're talking, I think you're still muted.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know why it keeps doing that. All right. Sweet. So let me see. I'm going to take a look at, so this is Yoon's solution. Okay. Thank you for sending it. Let's take a look. Okay. So I'm going to make sure, boop, deletes. Awesome. Okay. Let's go to components. I'm going to go to app. That's the first place we go to. And we have handle remove list item, React create context. And it's being exported. So that's important too, right? Got to export it because the child component needs to import it. I'm going to go down here. And now we have handle remove list item provider. And the value is the method that we want to pass down. And you can see you just commented out the code and we're passing it down. Awesome. Here's the handle remove. It's the opening and closing. We're passing down that value. No. So if I go to to-do list, oh, handle remove list item is here. Oh, so there we go. I got to get rid of that. Maybe that's why it was working. Let's take a look. All right. So I get rid of that. It can't be here because it'll execute, right? Or there's a chance that it. What's up?
Oh, no. I said I forgot about it.
Okay. So in the to-do list item, we do useContext. We import useContext. We kind of use the useContext hook to pull, right, whatever was exported and put it into this new method, right? You're just calling them the same thing. That's fine. And then down here, we're executing it and passing it the to-do. And up here, you did props.to-do, right? And so that should get rid of it. I'm going to fork this and then just refresh it. I just want to see if I was to do something. If I did props.to-do here, maybe that's props.to-do. I'm just saying, if I got rid of this, would it still work? Yeah, it still works. Okay. I know there were some issues, and I was helping Gustavo and Megan, and they, in all honesty, had like the same code. Oh, there you go. Apparently, Megan, you didn't have the same code. You just like around the import and the to-do list items. Oh, I got you. Around this import here. Got it. That was the thing. So what we noticed was this. There were times when if it was this, everything seems to work, but the delete button didn't work, right? And so the error, once again, I didn't catch this, but the error was this. Watch when I click on delete, we were getting, handle remove item is not a function. And we're struggling, like, why is that happening? Well, because we need to pull it out. Otherwise, we're exporting an object. We're not exporting this key here that has the function. Okay? I think that's what. I think, Gustavo, maybe that was the same problem you might have had also. I'm not sure. Okay. So, all right. So that was the solution. So let me slack out the solution. What is the solution? I'll put the solution also in here to do this on this context, right? Okay. Okay. There we go. Awesome. Trying to pull up. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and get everyone back. Any questions? Trying to use context? No? Okay, I'm gonna share my screen one more time. Let's see. As for the homework, just read up on use reducer. I know we're gonna be using that next week. As for your final project, I will have, for the next class, I'll have a sign-up sheet, and we'll just kind of break out between me and Abdul to discuss the project. If we have some time, we can cover some additional material as well. Cool. Awesome. Cool. That's going to be class. Just exit tickets. I mean, I have the exit tickets here. Oh, I also put in here D3. I know a few of you have asked for some resources. So I added here a bunch of articles to read and some code pens that I put together that include React and D3. Okay, we won't be doing that for a couple of weeks, but you have it. If there's something that you were looking specifically to do, reach out. I can try to help out best I can in that time. Because D3 itself, it's a whole different library. Like that would be days and days of like, this is how you do D3. So it's not going to be the thing you're just going to jump in and be like, oh, I can start working with it. There is that learning curve just to use the D3 library itself. Now incorporated into React. Okay, exit tickets and have a good night. See you on Thursday.
Thanks,
All
Joe.
right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.